made in this image, a mirror in this reflection. Black and beautiful, my shortcomings, this is perfections. Addicted to this spoil, I'm effortless while they toil. On the clouds, I'm in crave. Homage to my people who fight to be equal.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Colorism Conversations. I'm Dr. Karen, founder of I Am the Color of Beautiful, global spoken word initiative and movement where we are redefining the standard of beauty for women of color. Our focus is on eradicating colorism in communities of color across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to have another incredible conversation tonight. I want you to invite all of your friends and family to come in and join in this conversation that we are having this evening. So today's topic is I don't see color. And we're going to talk about some really interesting things regarding that statement and what that statement means many times for people that it's directed at. When people say, I don't see color. So joining us, of course, this evening is my sister, Renee Moore. Hello, beautiful.
Oh, hello. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful things.
So we're going to talk about I don't see color. And I want to acknowledge that Renee is the public health advisor for I Am the Color of Beautiful. Because when we talk about colorism can be designated as a mental health issue as well as a public health issue. So we have Renee to help us in regard to the public health aspect and issue of colorism. And I do want to clarify that we're not saying that colorism is a mental health condition. We're saying that colorism brings about mental health issues. So I want to be really clear about that because people sometimes get a little upset. We'll put it that way, upset when you say it's a mental health issue. It's not, condition. It's not a mental health condition, but the effects of colorism can bring on mental health issues, self-esteem, depression, all of those different kinds of things that fall into what's classified as mental health.
Right.
So we're going to talk about now this statement, I don't see color. And what brought this up is I was on a Zoom, I think it was last week. And, I don't know, because, what is it? People say death by Zoom, right? Because we're on all these Zoom calls now. Everything is Zoom right now, right? So I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, one of those Zoom calls I was on. And someone was talking about Black entrepreneurship. and the person that was the guest on the show was a white woman, and she said, "I don't see color." And so, it occurred to me that it's something that we definitely need to talk about when people say, "I don't see color," because there's so many aspects in which that statement really diminishes who we are as people when people say, "I don't see color."
Right.
So one of the things that it does bring up is when people say, first of all, and I want to get your feedback on this too, which, first of all, God created us to see color.
Definitely.
God is the master creator. God created color, and He created us to see color. So, you know, to say, "I don't see color," you're denying what God has created you to be able to see.
That's true. And I think what their intention is to say that, I see you as an equal, but you're not saying that. I
No.
think it's more of a thing to make them feel comfortable and to try and make you feel comfortable. I don't think it's said maliciously. I think it's just trying to say, oh, okay, we're all equals. But, as you mentioned, God made a range of colors, and you can just look at the black race or any race of color and see the spectrum of colors just within one race. Look outside your window and see the spectrum of colors, green and brown and red and all the beautiful colors in a rainbow. So color is important to God.
Yes.
The world would be very dull if it was just gray. So basically you're saying all I see is in gray. I don't see black, I don't see white, I see gray. Well, that's a very dull world, first of all. Um, but what you're also doing is you're saying you're denying me, my culture, my heritage, and all the lived experiences that have made me who I am.
Exactly.
Because the color of your skin very much determines how you experience this world.
That's right.
Irregardless of how that one person feels like, I don't see color, it's a better thing to say, I see color, but I see more than that. I see who you are as a person. I see all the richness that you can provide to this relationship from your cultural view.
Right.
So it's, and what that does then is that makes me feel devalued. It makes me feel like you haven't heard what I said. It makes me feel like I'm not important.
Right. And like you said, you're not fully honoring who I am as a human being. And then, there's so many different layers of who we are as people. And all of those layers have a story with them. So, I'm a woman that has stories. I'm a black woman that has stories. I'm a deeply melanated black woman, a whole lot of stories. I'm a wife. I'm an entrepreneur. There's so many layers of who we are as people, period, that you cannot diminish. So to say you don't see color means that you are diminishing my experiences and my stories as a black woman and as a deeply melanated black woman. And the other thing I want to say is that it's not just people of other races that say I don't see color. It's not just white people that say I don't see color. I've heard black people say that. And most of the time when black people say it, it's in regard to colorism. And they want to be able to say that, okay, I don't see color. But again, when it comes to colorism, if you're going to say to me, you don't see color, again, you're diminishing my story and my experiences of who I am as a deeply melanated woman of color or as a light skinned woman of color. If I say to you, I don't see color, well, all the experiences that you've had as a light skinned woman of color,
Mhm.
I'm diminishing that by not acknowledging you for for who you are. And then to also say that in respect to all of that, that it's, I'm diminishing all of that and just letting you know that, like you say, it makes to try for the person to make themselves feel better and thinking that they're making you feel better and not really wanting to be called a racist. People don't want to be called racist, even though they speak racism, they display racism. They don't want to be called racist, and they will blatantly tell you, "I'm not a racist." Okay, but what you just said was racist.
And not only that, but it perpetrates racism. Because when you say to me, I don't see color, you're basically saying, like I said, everybody's equal. Well, if everybody's equal, then who's responsible for the disparities that we face in a wide range of systems? The criminal justice system, the hiring system, the housing system. Who's responsible for those? Who's responsible for and so that then puts the burden on people of color to say, well, you're just like me, and the reason you're not as successful as me, or you don't live in the neighborhood that I live in, is because there's something wrong with you. You haven't worked hard enough. You just don't want whatever it is I want. So you're now saying I'm equal, and anything that I haven't had the same opportunities, because I haven't had the same opportunities that you've had, that's my fault. So there we go again with it's very microaggressive. It's very and that once again puts the burden on me. So now I have to deal with this from a stress standpoint, from the psychological aspects of that. You're blaming me for my station in life, which I really had nothing to do with, because of the systematic racism that has been in this history since this country was created.
Right.
I'm the one that's responsible for that because you don't see color. We're all equal.
And even to say, I don't see color, when typically we describe each other by color,
It's true.
which sometimes sometimes that really gets under my skin. But we that's how we describe each other. So the first thing people will normally say, if I'm saying to you, do you know who Jackie is? And you say no. Well, normally the first thing people will say out of their mouths is she's white, or that's the dark skinned girl with the red hair, or that's the light skinned girl with the green eyes. This is typically, we describe people
Right.
based on color. So to say I don't see color, you are really in denial, because you do, and that's typically
Yeah.
how we describe one another when we are trying to tell somebody, to get somebody to remember who someone was, or whatever it is that we're trying to get across. Usually the first thing we don't say, she's the doctor that, so and so. We automatically we go to color.
It's true.
That's
And
what we do.
not only that, but when you deny seeing color, you're not only hurting the person that you're saying that to, but you're hurting yourself, because you're robbing yourself of the rich experiences that you could be participating in or learning from by acknowledging, what you're you're a dark-skinned Black woman. So what can I learn about what it is that deeply melanated Black women experience and how they have to move through the world?
Right.
And how can I use that to make me a better person?
And to help solve the issue of color.
And or you know what, you're a white person. I don't live in that world. I experience it from my perspective, but what's it like from your perspective? What can we learn about each other culturally? What can we learn about each other socially? What can we learn about each other economically? What can we learn? So when you make that statement, you're not only hurting me, but you're hurting you, because you're robbing yourself of an opportunity to learn and try to understand what other people experience in this world.
Right. So the other thing that comes along with saying I don't see color is, and we've touched on this a little bit, is that you don't hear me.
Mhm.
And many times it's used as as one woman described it, as the nuke button to, when you're having discussions about racism, when you're having discussions about colorism, it's kind of that nuke button that eliminates the uneasiness of talking about racism or colorism, that, to say I don't see color, so that you call yourself putting the person at ease when we're having these discussions about these isms that exist in our community. And so you saying that, feeling that you're putting me at ease because you're saying, well, I don't see color. Well, yeah, you do. Yes,
And
you do. And you're trying to say to me that, well, you don't really need to feel that way, which again, please don't tell me how I'm supposed to feel. You shouldn't feel that way because I don't see color.
and and that what that like you said, it causes you not to hear what I'm saying.
Right,
So if I'm in, let's say, a work situation and I feel that something someone said was offensive or discriminatory because I'm a Black woman, when I bring that out, you don't hear that because you're going to tell me, well, I don't see color. But then you're robbing me of that voice
right,
to say, well, this is the way it is, and this is how offensive this is to someone who's Black, or someone who's light skinned, or someone who's dark skinned. But
right.
you're
And
robbing
it's
me. You're
shutting
trying
down,
to rob me of my voice. You're trying to rob me of
right,
my ability to speak out against things that I see as discriminatory or offensive.
and shutting down that dialogue only perpetuates the system.
It
When
does.
you shut down that dialogue saying, well, I don't see color.
Yeah.
Okay, but what you said, okay, indicates, and of course, most of the time when people say things or they do things, and we get these, we talked about this last time, these sorry apologies, and that people want to say they're not racist, but or they're not colorist, that you have to understand how what you said though, and trying to shut down understanding that what you said was hurtful, trying to shut that down by saying I don't see color. You're only making it worse.
You are.
You're only making it worse. And you have to be able to acknowledge that what you said was offensive, and what you said was hurtful, and you not wanting to hear how I felt about it, and us opening up a conversation and having a conversation about exactly what you said and what that meant and how I interpreted it. You need to know and be able to listen to what I'm saying about how that affected me, because I feel it was it was a direct insult to me.
Right. Yeah.
So the other thing that it also says is that you don't understand me when you say I don't see color.
Right. And
So
that's
you're not
yeah.
having a desire to really understand my life, where I come from, how I have to navigate through this world, how I exist in this world. And again, it's a means of stifling conversation and perpetuating the issue.
Right. And we all have the experiences that we've had from our youth going forward from the time we were born. And
Yeah.
those are all things that help shape us. So if you don't try to understand the kind of life I've had to lead, then you won't understand why I'm offended by certain things. You won't understand, you don't value all the experiences in my life that have made me the person I am today. So you're basically saying my lived experience is unimportant, excuse me. My lived experience is unimportant, and just as of right now, we don't see color. Well, that just invalidates my whole life, because the things that I do and say, the way I carry myself through this world, are all based on all the times that I've been followed through a store. They're based on those times when I've been told, oh, you would have been, at least you're light skinned, you would have been a house slave. It's based on that whole thing about light skinned girls are this and dark skinned girls are this. It's based on any and every interaction I've had, not only with colorism within my race, but racism and colorism outside of my race.
Right.
And so you're not seeing me for who I am and the color I am invalidates all of my life experiences in your eyes, or in my eyes. That's what says you're doing to me. You're invalidating everything that has made me the person I am and the way I walk through this life.
Exactly. And it also puts you in a position where, and this is one of the things that I think is really very important for us as human beings to understand and try to learn and grow from each other's experiences. Because when you carry that, you carry your experiences into the workplace, you carry your experiences into your education, into education platforms. We carry our experiences everywhere we go. And if we all, I think that most people, not all, most people want to believe that they are decent people, that they're not racist, that they're not colorist, that they treat everyone the same. When in fact, if we're really honest with ourselves, we continue to judge people based on the color of their skin, based on the way they look, based on how they wear their hair, based on where they live. We continue to do that on a regular basis. And I think that we have so often, we're kidding ourselves to think that we are so open and above judging people based on things like that, that we're not really dealing with our own preconceived notions of who people are, because we continue to do this on a regular basis. And it calls for us as human beings to really look deep inside of ourselves and to really look at what are our preconceived notions, how are we judging people, how are we looking at people and deciding who they are, once again, before we've had a conversation. So that shutting down conversations by saying, I don't see color, or it doesn't matter to me how you look or how you're dressed, or, I think that we really need to stop and really be honest with ourselves as to, are we really looking at people for who they really are before we even have a conversation, because we make judgments.
We do. It's so interesting because I had a good coworker of mine. We used to go walking, and one day I said, "Okay, let's play this game." And we'll just randomly point out people on the street and say, "What do you think they do for a living?" And that's an interesting thing because we say we don't see color, but like you said, we judge people on everything from the color of their skin to the way they dress to the car they drive to the neighborhood they live in to the people they hang around. And it was so interesting because I would think in my mind and then listen to hear what they said. And there were some things that we began to see a pattern. Like if we saw a black man in scrubs. So the question is he an orderly or is he a surgeon? And will you think that same thing if you see a white man in scrubs? Will you say automatically that he's an orderly, or will you automatically say he's a surgeon?
Mm-hmm.
If you see a young black man in a car, do you say he's an entrepreneur or he's a drug dealer? So how did you arrive at that decision? If you put a young white boy in a car and a young black boy in the same car, what decision do you arrive at? And if you arrive at a different decision, then you've made that based solely on the color of their skin.
Right. And just because, and what you would probably, in a lot of instances, a lot of people would say, well, the young white boy, his parents have money. But the young black boy, well, his parents might have money too.
No. Or he might just be an entrepreneur. Some of these young people,
Oh yeah.
okay, with all this techie stuff going on,
Yeah.
they're making their own money. Or
Oh, yeah.
maybe he's been working all his life and he saved up and that's just the car he wanted.
So the whole premise behind this is being able to have people understand about what you're saying when you say, I don't see color. And it's important, I think, for us to not only bring to light about you saying, you're saying you don't see me, you're saying you don't hear me, you're saying you don't understand me. And so this is one of the reasons why I am so keen on conversation, because now the conversation is okay. So if all of that comes behind, I don't see color. So what is, and not that we want to tell people what they need to say or what's the right thing to say. I think that everyone has to look within themselves, and and we have to have conversations about what what we should be communicating, not saying, but what we should be communicating.
Right.
So when you're talking about what is it that you want to communicate, then you have to really look at, okay, so in the whole process of conversation and communicating, what is it that I want to communicate? So now that I have been it has been explained to me that when you say I don't see color, you're saying I don't see you, I don't hear you, I don't understand you. I should say, you don't see me, you don't hear me, you don't understand me,
And you don't value me.
you don't value me. All those different lists of things about what I don't see color means when you say that to a person of color. So, in understanding about conversation and communication. So, if what you really want to communicate is the color of your skin does not keep me from seeing you, hearing you, understanding you, valuing you. You've got to determine how you want to communicate that to someone.
Right.
Because
Or,
once you understand, Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you got to do better. So understanding now, when you say, I don't see color, understanding how that translates and is communicated to a person of color, then now you've got to understand how you need to communicate differently. And it's about having the conversation to understand what you have said, how it was received. Because many times we don't want to look at how what we say, how it's been received. And we get very defensive when it comes to, okay, that's what you said to me. Let me tell you how I received it.
well,
And
so
this is one of the reasons why I many times have such an issue with texting, because you may have texted and your tone was different than the tone in which I received it. Because you've got to be mindful of how it was communicated to me.
right. And so
And
I think,
we're often thinking about, when we're saying things, about how is it being received on the other end. And this is why we have to have conversations.
right. And I think that in order to prevent people from becoming um, defensive, that a lot of times to get to what they're trying to say is to ask questions. So if someone says to you, I don't see color, then the question becomes, well, exactly what do you mean by that? And then you can get into deeper conversation about, well, how do you, how does not seeing color help everyone in this room feel appreciated as an individual?
Mhm.
You kind of have to ask those probing questions. And a lot of times it is also depending upon the situation. If it's somebody that, you're not going to really have any kind of contact with, and, sometimes you just got to just be like, okay, I'm going to move on
Yeah,
with that.
that's how I was on the Zoom call. It
Yeah,
wasn't the place to address that.
It wasn't the place and the time. But if you're in a situation where you have coworkers, um, teachers, because a classroom is the best place for learning. And if you've got a multicultural class, there's so much information and culture and history and knowledge and viewpoints that can be derived from that setting. And
Yeah.
so for you to say you don't see color, you're just robbing everybody in that room the opportunity of learning. So if
Right.
it's a teacher with, if it's a high school or a college, you need to go to that teacher and say, you said something, or if it's appropriate at that setting, say, when you said I don't see color, what exactly do you mean by that? And how do you think that makes me feel as a light-skinned Black woman compared to my darker skinned Black sisters and brothers, or my Asian, classmates, or my Indian classmates, or
Hmm.
my even Hispanic classmates? Because, people make assumptions about people just because,
Absolutely.
you're people tend to think that Hispanics are all light skinned. Well, they're not. So
Right.
you've made an assumption that somebody without a Hispanic name is no longer is just Black, but you don't see color. So you're missing a whole history and culture behind who they are
Yeah. And their experiences.
and their experiences and how they view the world. So sometimes I think, like I said, I think that most people who say that are well intentioned, but they need to be challenged on that. And they need to understand, and through an acquisitive kind of very non aggressive way, come to understand how that makes people feel. And there's something I'm sure that everybody has a strong sense of, you know. So if it's a person who is very much into their culture as a white person, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but Italians have a very strong sense of their culture. So I would say to that person, so how would you feel if I said, oh, I don't see that you're Italian, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a very strong part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't see that you're Jewish. If your religion is a strong part of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm saying to you, I don't see that. And how does that make you feel? If
Right.
that's such a part of who you are and everything you do, and your whole life has been based around this strong part of your heritage and your culture, then you're saying to me, mine's not important, but yours is.
Right. Right.
How
And
did
also to understand that not all, which I don't think it's something that many times other races or other cultures don't fully understand, that not everyone's experiences are the same just because we're the same race.
that's true?
Okay, my experiences are my experiences based on what I've encountered in my life, and who I show up in the world as. And
Mhm.
you cannot assume that my experiences are going to be the same as any other Black woman's experience, and or the same as even any other deeply melanated Black woman's experience.
And perfect
All have
example of
our
you.
own individual experiences. And yes, there are some experiences that we can definitely identify with. And some of our experiences have been somewhat the same, just being Black in America.
Mhm.
Okay, some of our experiences, but then, we've got to navigate through the world as who we are. And those experiences are very different. So when you talk about I don't see color, like you said, you're not even acknowledging what my experience has been as a deeply melanated Black woman, having to navigate my life in this country as a deeply melanated Black woman. You're just kind of erasing that, saying you don't see color.
Right. And and not only just color, but just to get, it's so important to really come to understand and know people just in general. Because I'm telling you, I've got friends from all over the world. And one
Yeah.
young lady is African. I wouldn't have known she was African unless she told me, but I didn't know that until I started talking to her.
Hmm.
And being African is very much a part of who she is, and the African cultures and the African traditions. And it's been just such an eye-opening experience to really sit down and talk to her and see how she sees her life not only from Africa, but here as an African who is automatically assumed to be American, and how she navigates through the world versus my friend who's Indian,
Hmm.
who, the culture and the history and the everything that makes her who she is.
Right.
And those are all wonderful experiences. And my friend from Costa Rica, if
Right.
you look at, you
Right.
think he's black until he opens his mouth and starts talking with that little bit of accent. He's got a kind of a Spanish New York accent. But the wonderful things you can learn about people and from people when you don't make assumptions about who they are or choose not to see them for who they really are.
Exactly. And there's so much that we can learn and experience if we take the time to have a conversation and to decide that we're not going to judge people by what they look like or where they live or what kind of car they drive or any of that. If we said, okay, I'm going to have a conversation because I really want to know who you are.
Yeah.
I really want to be able to communicate with you and understand where you come from and what your experiences have been so that I can learn about you and truly get to know who you really are
Yeah.
as
And
a person. But that takes time. And see, we're living in this time now where people, everything, it's just amazing to me. People don't anymore even want to take the time to put the phone down. We started off that. Put the phone down and have a conversation and be present when you are talking with someone without being on the phone or without, we're not taking that time anymore to really be present and really be communicating with people and spending time actually experiencing their culture, understanding what their culture is like, understanding what their life is like. We're in this society now that everything, if it doesn't happen in 2 seconds, people are moving on, and you can't have a conversation in 2 seconds.
No, you can't. And the other thing is that it's so important. I was reading in an article. Martin Luther King said that he wanted his children to be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. That doesn't mean he didn't say, I don't want them to be seen as black. What he
Hmm.
said is, I want them to be seen as more than black. I
Mm.
want you to get past the color of their skin and look into the content of their character. He
Right?
didn't say be colorblind.
No, he didn't.
He was just saying get over it, okay, and get down in deep. And the only way you can know the content of somebody's character is to have a conversation
That's right.
and to acknowledge
Right.
everything that makes them who they are.
Exactly. Exactly. And wanting to really spend that time. It's interesting because I could not believe it was a few years ago now. Of course, I haven't been in a restaurant in well over a year, but my husband and I went to Fridays. I think it was Fridays. And they had started having DJs in restaurants.
Mm. Oh God.
And I was really, we didn't stay long because they decided to sit us over by the DJ booth.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'd have gone running out of it.
So, but the thing that was so amazing to me was that typically, and mind you, again, this is a cultural thing, I think. Typically, for most, I'm going to say black people, dinner time was conversation time.
That's well, you need to say it for older black people because I don't know that
Yeah.
that's true for.
I mean, things have changed so much now that, I mean, families don't even have dinner together anymore. But typically, the meal was the conversation time.
Mhm.
So even when you went out to a restaurant and you went out with your friends or whatever, it was to break bread and have conversation, which you cannot do if there's a DJ and loud music blasting. So again, everything takes us away from conversation.
Mhm.
because the phones take us away from being present and having conversations. Now when you go to a restaurant, there's music and there's all this noise and all this stuff going on, and we can't really have true honest conversation.
The interesting thing about that is with the phones and everything else that's going on, we've developed this, what they call FOMO, fear of missing out. But you are missing out. You're
You are
missing out on the rich experience that's right in front of you
in
by
front of you.
having a conversation with somebody. But we're so afraid we're going to miss this tweet and that Twitter and whatever else, this Instagram and this, we're afraid of missing out on all that stuff. But we're missing out. We're missing out on the important things, the things that really, what somebody is having for dinner at some other restaurant, that's not going to add any value to your life.
No.
What some star is doing tonight is not going to add any value to your life. They don't know you from Adam, but
No,
you've got somebody right in front of you who
exactly.
can add so much value to your life. We don't talk to our grandparents and our parents like we used to. That is years of knowledge and wisdom and just wonderful things that we're missing out on because we're engaged in this phone.
Hmm.
We're engaged in the music and we just don't want to miss out on the party. But
Right.
we're missing out on the beauty and the knowledge and the wisdom and the culture and just so much information that's right there in front of us if we would take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And until we really, and I think in some instance, the pandemic has made that worse
Mm.
because we've been, as much as we have been put in situations where, especially in the very beginning, you know, parents were really finding out who their children were. All the things the teachers said, and you said, that's not my
Yeah.
child. Well, parents were finding out who their children were. I remember the guy, I think he went viral. They were saying he apologized. He said, I apologize to
Yep.
all my children's teachers. I didn't know his kid was like this. I apologize. So, we got to a place where, we were, we were staying home. And so we had the opportunity, if we saw it that way, we
Mm.
had the opportunity to really get to know who our children are, if they live at home with you,
Mm.
um, who our spouses are. We got to find out some real things because many times, people that had 2 and 3 jobs and stuff and were hardly ever home. Well, guess what?
Mm.
Now you're home, and you not only get to find out who the people you're living with are, you get to find out who you are
It's true.
and who you are in dealing with the people that live in your house.
Yeah.
You get to find that out.
And not only that, you also get to find out who you are in relation to how you respond to all the stuff that's going on in the news in the world.
Yeah.
How you really feel about the various things that are happening regionally.
Yeah.
And what you choose to do about that, or how you choose to respond to that.
Right. Right. And it's so important that we really look inside of ourselves and really see who we are and what our judgments of other people are, and how we really need to be honest with ourselves about how we are, because we'll say we don't see color. We'll say that we treat everybody the same, we see everybody the same, but for real we don't. When I think about, and I know I had to re-examine how I see, when we were having in Philadelphia, when we were having all the young people and the slash mobs. And I remember being in Walmart, and this group of young people came in, and you should have seen how quick I was getting out of Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
But the media again had an influence on now how I saw groups of Black young people who came in large groups into a store. I got this whole different perception of how I need to respond by what was being reported was happening in the media, and how I needed to respond when that particular group of young people may not have been what some of these other young people were that were being put out there in the news. And we go through these different, we have we have preconceived notions many times about young Black men who have a whole lot of tattoos, and we don't know. I'm not a tattoo person, so I don't know what the tattoo means, and I shouldn't make assumptions about what any of the tattoos mean. And the fact that they got tattoos when I don't know. So why would I judge you because you have tattoos? That you're in a gang or whatever else comes with the judgment of somebody having tattoos when I don't honestly know.
Because it was very popular in the military to get tattoos, especially in the Navy. That was the thing,
Yeah.
Most, I would say, a large percentage of people in the Navy had tattoos and had a whole lot of them. I shouldn't say a large percent, but quite a few people in the Navy, especially the men, that was what they did. So this was a hardworking person who just chose because of the job they were in and the people they were around or whatever personal, inclination they had. That's what they chose to do. So we can't make assumptions that because they did that, and we do it with everybody, not
Oh,
only blacks but whites. You look at a white person with a lot of tattoos, and you automatically assume they're some biker or something, So we do have to. We all have our bias.
yeah, we do.
And we have to acknowledge that.
We do.
We have to
We
acknowledge
really
that.
do.
And, I've really come to, really over the past year, especially, kind of look at how the news frames things, because that's what a lot of times forms our opinion. And so they'll frame as a group of blacks is a riot, but a group of whites is celebrating. A group. So we have to really look at how things are being framed for us.
Right.
We have to look and search for the good in everybody, because there are young people, Black young people out here who are doing phenomenal things.
Absolutely.
But they don't sell the news. So the news frames things and takes things that are going to give them ratings.
Right.
The young Black girl that created the stitches that change color when they're infected. Did you see her on the news?
Nope.
Okay. The young Black man that, I think he was a teenager, won some kind of video creation contest out of thousands of people. Those are not what we see on the news. So we do have to be careful of the things that are being fed to us, and not be unaware of our own bias by saying, I don't see color.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
so this has been great. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a good conversation.
Yes. And we certainly want to encourage people to really look at your own biases. And, even as Christians,
Yeah.
we have to look at our own biases.
Yeah.
We as Christians sometimes have biases, and we have to look at them, and we have to really look at how we see people and be very aware of it. Be very aware of it in all of the encounters that we have. Am I prejudging someone right now that I haven't had a conversation with?
Yeah.
And it can be difficult, I think, in this day and time. It can be difficult to have conversations with people because not everyone is open to conversation. Some people feel, well, first of all, how do I want to say this? there are a lot of rude, ignorant people out here.
Mhm.
And if you try to have a conversation with them, they want to call you names and say, but in those instances where because I think too that you'll know when you can have a conversation with someone.
And that's why I think it's important to make it non aggressive, not to make it more of a question type situation than an attack, rather than saying, well, you shouldn't say that because you don't know what I've been through, and get the head going and all that stuff. Step back, take a deep breath, and say, why would you say that? What makes you think that?
Because
How
I
do
know
you,
one of my husband's nurses, she had, I mean, and these tattoos were amazing. Now, I'm not a tattoo person. I don't plan on getting any tattoos, but she had these amazing tattoos. And I said to her, your tattoos are amazing. And I asked her, I said, did it hurt? And she said, yeah, it hurt a little bit. And then, um, so I asked her about a couple of them, and she told me the story behind a couple of her tattoos. And it was really very interesting.
Mm,
It was very interesting. And I think she liked the fact that I asked her about it. And she had the opportunity to tell me a story, which
that's
I
it.
think people want to do. People want to tell you the story about, about something that's important to them. People want to share those stories.
And the thing about that is, because you showed an interest in learning, she
Right.
was willing to engage in that conversation. If
Right.
you had said to her, why would you get a tattoo? You know, that right there puts her on the defensive. And you would never have learned, or she might have gone ahead and just told you, but it wouldn't have been such an enriching conversation for you,
Right.
because automatically you put her on the defensive.
Exactly.
So the important thing is to try not to put people on the defensive. And once again, I know, the responsibility falls on us, which is stressful in and of itself. But the end result is probably worth it, because hopefully it will alleviate stress in the future when you
Yes,
have interaction with that person.
absolutely. And the whole idea and the whole premise behind having a conversation is coming to learn and grow and understand so that we can be better at this thing called humanity
That's it.
and civility. We can be better at civility because we're learning and growing and understanding.
Right. And a lot of times, I'm going to say this in my last comment. A lot of times, the things we say are just because we've historically said them, and
Yeah,
we never think about why
yeah,
we're saying them. That's what we've always said. Oh, I don't see color. That's what my mother said. That's what everybody says. I don't see color. But why are you saying that?
exactly.
You need to stop and think about what's behind that.
Right,
So, sometimes people don't even realize why they say things, or the implications of what they're saying,
right,
because they've just always said it.
right. So, just to kind of wrap up, when you say, I don't see color, you're
Mm.
saying, I don't see you, I don't understand you, I don't hear you, I don't value you and your life experiences. That's what we're saying. Thank you, beautiful.
Thank you, sweetie.
All right. Hold
Queen
on.
Dr. Karen Moore, or Civility Ambassador. Global Fashionista.
Leading light of greatness.
All right, now.
All right. Thank you.
You're
Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight for this incredible conversation. I don't see color. And I invite you to first let us know if you're watching the replay. Please let us know if you've watched the replay, and to invite others to see what took place here today so that we can all come to an understanding, so that we can be individuals who operate in civility, and that we learn and we grow and we understand each other. So thank you so much for joining in. Let's see, I have some announcements for you. The binaural beat relaxation track is available. It's $3.99. It will help you to relax and get affirmations to help you relax and increase your confidence and your courage and I speak all kinds of affirmation on the track. It's a 7-minute track, 7 minutes to relaxation. So you can get your binaural relaxation track. The From Pain to Prose, No Longer Invisible, we are postponing that. It's not going to happen April 27th. We're postponing it because we are moving everything over to a new platform. So we're going to wait until that takes place. You all pray for me. I am a pretty technically savvy person, but now I've got to redo all this stuff and move it over to another platform. So pray for me as I take on that. But we're moving to another platform. So once we get straight and we're up and running and we know everything is working good on the new platform, we will again launch From Pain to Prose, No Longer Invisible. The Color After Dark, Beautifully Balanced. We'll be coming back with that once we get everything back up and running also on that end. So we'll keep you posted on when we're coming back with Beautifully Balanced and From Pain to Prose and all of those things. But in the meantime, we will be here every Sunday at 6 p.m. We're still continuing with our colorism conversations. Wondrously Made Wednesday. Please, if you have anyone that you would like us to feature for our Wondrously Made Wednesdays, make sure to put them not only on the Color of Beautiful page, but you can let me know that you would like so-and-so to be featured for our Wondrously Made Wednesday. And we thank you again so much for joining us for this edition of Colorism Conversations. I'm Dr. Karen Moore. Have an incredible, incredible evening.